Welcome to this video on committees. My name is Scott Vaughn. I'm with the Community Development Unit of Alberta Culture, Multiculturalism, and Status of Women. Before I begin, I would like to mention that the goal of our board development video series is for board members of nonprofit organizations to have the basic knowledge, skills, and tools to be successful in their work. We realize that some of you are not board members, and that's fine. But we want you to be aware that the information, concepts, and ideas presented are from board member perspectives. Also, the information presented here is aimed at an introductory level or as a refresher for board members to ensure they have the base level understanding of board governance concepts and principles needed to successfully do their work. We do have other resources that we can share with you, such as our toolkit. There is a link in the description of this video to our toolkit that provides additional resources and links that we think are helpful for you and your nonprofit organization as you tackle your governance issues. Included in this toolkit is a copy of the slides we use in this video and all the videos in our board development video series. You can also hit the subscribe button down below and turn the notification on to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notification about our upcoming videos. The last thing I want to mention before we get going is that in this video, we are not providing advice. The information offered in this video and the related materials are not intended to constitute legal advice, the rendering of the legal concepts, consulting, or other professional services of any kind. We simply want to share with you information that we think will be helpful for board members as you navigate your organization through its governance and operation. So without further ado, let's get going. So what are committees? One of the biggest parts about how an organization gets its work done is the governance framework of the organization, and it's where committees come to help the board. They are a big part of the structure of the organization. Board members must define the types and structures of committees. Basically, what committees the board needs, what they do, how they do it, and what level of authority they have, and how they report to the board. So what are committees? Board committees are usually a small or sometimes large group of people that are focused on a specific task that the board needs to do. Sometimes the board needs to bring in people with experience and expertise in a specific field from outside the board. Sometimes it's also more efficient to divide up the work. Sometimes it's also easier to deal with an issue in a smaller group than the full board. So in such cases, the board creates a committee to provide a counseling and advice to the board to handle a task on behalf of the board. One other perspective to look at board committees is to say they are created by the board and they work like a mediator between the board and the staff in the organization because they help the board have a better perspective of the staff in the organization. They also help staff have a better perspective of the board in the organization. Board committees are initiated by the board, and the board decides what the committee will work on, its level of authority, and how to report to the board. Members of the board committee can be board members, staff, or volunteers, or people from outside the organization. So what are some of the benefits of committees? In general, committees support the work that the board needs to do. They help the board complete their work and basically help reduce the workload of the board. Committees usually do the preparatory work that should be done before the board meets and make a decision about that work. For example, they may develop options or they may develop recommendations for the consideration of the board. Their work can help keep the momentum between the meetings of the boards as well. Sometimes committees also work with the staff on behalf of the board to implement certain operations and activities in the organization. The next benefit of committees is that they serve as a training ground for future board members to learn what to do and how to do it. Some committee members may learn about the work of the organization and may become board members later on as a result. Committees also increase the ability of the boards to be more nimble and responsive to emerging issues. When your organization sets up committees to take action, you are essentially creating a working group to do the work that needs to be done for the organization. And many of them are not on the board. With this action-oriented committee or working group, the board will have time during their meetings to focus on important and concerning matters of the organization. Without committees, it is the board that has to deal with all the tasks and prepare the material that is needed. This can be not the best use of the board's time, so committees can benefit the board by taking care of various actions efficiently. So here's a personal example. Event planning. Should our board take time to be used to figure out what meals we should offer? No, that can maybe be better spent elsewhere. Board committee versus staff committees. Before we go into more depth and details about board committees, I'd like to mention that in organizations, we usually have board committees and staff committees, and they are different. Board committees answer to the board and report to the board. The board basically uses committees to delegate some of their work to the committee. Board committees are usually focused on the work of the board and they report to the board. But staff committees generally report to the senior staff person or the executive director of the organization. They sometimes develop procedures for programs and services, and those procedures cannot contradict board decisions, or they are focused maybe more on the implementation of programs and services in the organization. But they are not generally concerned with the overall governance of the organization. That being said, in this session, we are focusing on board committees and not so much staff committees. What are the types of committees? There are different types of committees that a board can create. The first one is standing committees. Standing committees, as the name may suggest, usually are permanent committees the board creates to do a specific job on a regular basis. They may recommend actions to the board, they may do some actions on behalf of the board, or they may propose policies in their area of their work. The whole board then reviews the documents that the committee creates or the recommendations they have made, and they decide whether to approve them or not. Some examples of standing committees are the Finance Committee, Audit Committee, Executive Committee, and so on. Some standing committees also create subcommittees. If the standing committee needs to do a short-term specific task, such as a standing finance committee that sets a subcommittee to draw up the initial draft of the budget for the year for them, then that is an example of a subcommittee. Another type of committee is an ad hoc committee. Your board may create an ad hoc committee to handle some issues that may come up. These committees are usually temporary committees, and they are more attractive to board members who prefer a targeted, short-term problem solving rather than a longer-term permanent committee participation. For example, if the board has a special event, they might just create an ad hoc committee to run that special event. Another type of committee is the advisory committee. An advisory committee is a group of volunteers that give advice or formulate opinions or make recommendations. Sometimes, also, if the board wants to get some answers from the community about a certain work, they might create an advisory committee from the community members to help them understand their perspective. In general, advisory committees are usually formal structures, but they do not have decision-making power, and their members are usually volunteers. Let's take a look at appointments. How long should appointments be? Usually in the organization's bylaws, there is a term limit for board members. It basically says how long someone can be a board member and how many times they can serve on the board consecutively. Similar to that, it is also helpful to clearly state a term limit for committee members. The recommendation is that they have fixed terms of office, like 2 or 3 years, for example, and also to have a specific rule about the number of consecutive terms that a member can serve on a committee. For example, they cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms. This is important because of 2 reasons. First, it helps board members to mitigate the negative consequences of people that are appointed to committees indefinitely. The second is that it makes it possible for the board to bring in new members to join in every few years. New people may bring a different line of thinking and different skills, and they can help creativity, efficiency, and innovation, which could help the board be more nimble and efficient in responding to new trends and changes. How can a board ensure effective oversight? Committees exist because the board wants that, and they do the work that the board is responsible for. So board members must be very careful to ensure that committees do what they say and have active oversight over their work. One tool that supports this board oversight is called a terms of reference. It is important that committees each have a terms of reference that clearly details what they do and how they do it and what is the level of authority. Terms of reference is basically a document that outlines the way in which a group of people, like the board committees, agree to work together to accomplish common goals. A terms of reference document usually describes the purpose, structure, and operating rules of the committee. It defines the responsibilities and accountabilities of the committee as well, and also is easy to understand. So sections of a terms of reference. Here are the sections that are included in a terms of reference document. Name and type of committee, their general purpose, their key duties and responsibilities, the level of authority they have, and the reporting relationship, composition, and appointments, their meetings, their resources, whether it's financial resources or human resources, their specific annual objectives, reports and target dates, review and evaluation process, and approval date and review date. Terms of reference for committees should be detailed in this way as much as possible. We've also added a link to a terms of reference document that the Ontario Organizational Development Program has created. The link is in the description of this video. So now, if you look at the terms of reference, you can see that there's one part that talks about the level of authority of the committee. And this is a very important part of the terms of reference. So yes, I'd definitely like to talk about this level of authority part right now. What authority can committees have? It is very important that board members clearly define the authority of the committee, and is very helpful for boards to discuss and establish the nature of that authority before the committee is created. So what authority can committees have? First off, remember, board members can delegate some, but all their work to committees. But the board can delegate those works that they want to under 4 different levels of authority, which we're going to go through now. The first one is limited advisor. In the first type of committee, the committee advises the board on various matters. For example, they may investigate something and report to the board. The board takes the advice and develops and approves related policies. The next one, active advisor. They investigate the matter and report to the board, but they also suggest an action. For example, they may draft relevant policies and give that draft to the board along with their report. The board will probably follow up with the committee's suggestion, but they may do edits and some changes and then approve it. We call the first type of committee limited advisor because they only report to the board and they only advise to the board, but they don't do anything more than that. The second type of committee, active advisor, we call that active advisor because they go one step further and they develop a draft of policy or suggest a course of action, but they still only advise the board. And the board is the one that decides what to do. The next type of committee, limited agent, the committee has a limited authority to take action with the supervision of the board. Such committees usually have a terms of reference document that explains the authority of the committee in detail. The terms of reference explicitly explains what the committee can do without the approval of the board. The board approves the terms of reference, and based on that, the committee can take action. Overall, in this type of authority, the committee can make certain decisions and take certain actions, but they have to be approved by the board and should be included in the terms of reference. So the committee still reports to the board, and the board still has the option to do changes and approve or even reject. So in this type of committee, it is important the board clearly defines what the committee can do in advance using the terms of reference. The last type of committees are the committees that have all the authority to take action, and they don't necessarily report their course of action to the board for approval, active agent. So the committee takes action and the board basically must accept that action, whether it is good or bad. If it is not what they liked, then they have to deal with it later. In the previous third type of committee, limited agent, above that we discussed, they do take action on behalf of the board, but they still need to report to the board regularly. In this fourth one, active agent, because they have full authority to take action, the key difference then is between a limited agent and an active agent is that the limited agent committee still has the reporting function. But as an active agent committee, there is limited or no reporting to the board. and the board has already given all authority to the committee and to make all the decisions and to take action. We're going to explore these four a little bit more in some examples. We're going to use this example as a board member of the ABC Youth Organization determined from the information provided in the questions coming up which level of authority you suggest be given to the committee that has been tasked with this action. So keep that in mind as we go through three questions. The first one, you're going to plan the annual end of the year celebration for the ABC Youth Organization. Which level of authority makes sense for that one? Is it limited advisor, active advisor, limited agent, active agent? Give you a second just to think about that question. There are no absolute right answers to any of the questions, as it depends on a number of factors associated with a specific example that we would never have enough paper or time to spell out on this slide. You would know these factors if it did pertain to your organization, though. Nonetheless, the committee in this first example would likely be on the agent versus advisory side of things. Further, in the first example, if this was a common end of the year celebration that's been held a number of times in the past, then the board might evaluate and feel quite confident to give the committee even an active agent authority, because maybe a number of people are returning from last year's event are returning to this year's committee. Giving them the active agent authority indicates we know you can do the job within the parameters of the terms of reference and the budget. And we are so confident in that, in fact, all we need is a report on how things went in the end. In the meantime, our board can concentrate on other matters as we know the end of the year celebration is being looked after. But if this was the first time ever the event was being held, then the board may want to be involved in it more and perhaps provide it with limited authority terms of reference parameters as a result. The committee can still take some action, but it needs to report back to the board regularly on the progress of the celebration event. Further, maybe the board simply wants to investigate the idea of having an end of the year celebration. Maybe they never had one before, and wants the committee to do an investigation and research on doing so. Then it may be moved into the limited advisor, active advisor area. So as you can see, it does depend. Let's do another example. And keep in mind, you're a board member of the ABC Youth Organization, and you're going to determine what is the best level of authority from the example that's provided. And this example is design and plan a large yearly fundraising event for the ABC Youth Organization. Again, I'll give you a second to think about this one. Which one is it? Is it limited advisor, authority, active advisor, limited agent, or active agent? So the same holds true for this one. It depends. Now, if this is an annual fundraising event that has raised significant dollars and has been held successfully by the committee for the number of past years, then active agent designation reflected in the terms of reference for the committee may make sense. If this was a new group doing it or a new fundraising event being tried for the first time, then the board may want more input themselves, and the reporting pieces from the committee they'll be expecting more, and thus they want to give it less authority. As a first time ever fundraising event, the board may simply want to set up the committee as an advisor, and the board itself makes the decisions and approvals needed for it to happen. Sounds familiar to the first question? Yes, it all depends. And finally, a third example. Again, you're a board member of the ABC Youth Organization. You're determining which level of authority you suggest with this example. And the example in the third one is research and identify options towards finding a new home facility for the ABC Youth Organization. Considerations will include financial capacity, location, future users, purpose of organization, etc. So again, was it limited advisor, limited agent, or active agent? I'll give you a moment to think about it. The task outline in itself speaks to the committee being an advisor. The only question is whether or not the board wants to have the committee suggest actions or recommendations to the board on which option is the best. If simply to report and investigate options for the new facility, then maybe the committee would have a limited advisor responsibilities reflected in its terms of reference. If the committee also wants to be tasked with providing suggestions and recommendations on the options, then it would be an active advisor responsibilities reflected in the terms of reference. So yes, those were 3 examples that really looking at level authority, which is a big part of terms of reference. You may have noticed I have associated authority designation to terms of reference of committees when I was doing the debrief. First of all, as you can see by the slide, whatever authority level you give to committee, that authority level needs to be reflected in the terms of reference for the committee. Secondly, you're increasing the authority of the committee reflected in the terms of reference as you move from limited advisor to active agent. Hopefully from this section, you see the importance of understanding why you have committees, types of committees, and being very mindful of the authority you choose as a board to give to each committee, which then is reflected in the terms of reference that needs to be included for all committees. So that's it, folks. On committees, our contact information is on the slide, and as well as you can see the toolkit information there as well. If you are in Alberta, you have a question and you need further information or like to request our services, you can contact us through email and phone. You can also access our website to know more about other resources and services we offer. And also, if you want to be informed of our future services and resources coming up, you could add your name, your email address to our subscription form, and you'll receive information about our services and resources as they become available. The link to the subscription form is in the description of the video as well. Okay, folks, thank you for your attention today to our video. Take care, stay healthy, and always remember our communities have so much more because of everything you do. Thank you all, and bye for now.